So, hi, I'm Liam Nolan from Comic Book Resources. I'm talking to Joshua Williamson and Daniel Sampere. So I'm just going to start off with the big news that Dark Crisis is officially a sequel to Crisis on Infinite Earths, guys.
Yeah.
So what were your reactions when you found out that you were going to be doing that kind of sequel / follow-up?
I mean, I think we've been working on this for so long, and I think last year we knew that all the pieces we were playing with, like, was all going to lead to this. You know, especially once we got Pariah involved. Like, once Pariah was involved, it felt like, oh no, this is a direct connection. Yeah, it's been super intimidating, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Were you guys able to talk to George Perez before he passed away? Because this seems like something he would have really been into, you know?
I did find out that when there was a tribute to George Perez, and before he passed, and somebody close to him went and read some of the stuff to him, and he was very happy and very excited about it. So that was really cool to find out.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've also we've spoken to a few people who've worked on Crisis events. Back in December, we talked to Phil Jimenez, who had worked on Infinite Crisis. And then I spoke to Grant Morrison a few months ago about just what it's like working on a giant event like this. And I've met and talked to Marv a few times over the years. And I mean, Marv is one that I find super intimidating to talk to at times, just because he's also the super nicest man. But he really knows it. He knows stuff. He knows the DCU really well.
Yeah. Well, did you guys get any specific tips for handling a crisis event?
Oh, just stay strong.
Yeah. Phil Jimenez had a lot of realistic, this is what it's gonna be like for you kind of advice. There's been some stuff throughout. I mean, it's interesting working on an event of this size, and you actually saw Phil today. Go ahead, you tell that story.
Just met Phil, and he was like, hey, it's been a great moment for me, because I grown up reading Infinite Crisis. It's I'm a huge fan. So he's just nicely welcome to the Crisis Club, and it's been a great moment for me.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Very little exclusive club.
Small exclusive club. Yeah, you're welcome. And I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing in this club.
Yeah,
I'm glad.
One of the things that Grant told me was to make sure that I still found a way to make it my story, to make it our story. Not just do a nostalgia fest. Try to find ways of putting myself into the story. That was their big advice. But also just it was nice to talk to somebody who understood how intense this can be. There's a lot of characters, a lot of moving pieces. I mean, you're not just writing one character, and Dark Crisis doesn't just star one character, it stars the entire DCU, and that's a lot, and it can be really intense. It's a lot of mental gymnastics, and I have multiple whiteboards in my office. It can be a lot of stuff.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun at the same time, because we're fans, we're DC fans.
Yeah.
So we're playing with all the toys. It's it's like a dream.
Yeah, I try to take a step back every once in a while and remind myself of that, because it's so intense. We have so much stuff to do. We're always working. It's nice every once in a while to take a step back and be like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing. It's really cool.
Yeah. Something that's really struck me about Dark Crisis, because last year I did kind of a read through of a lot of the big DC events, was how Dark Crisis really balances this bigness, this grandness, while at the same time it is also so small and personal in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Can you guys speak just a little bit to balancing that in the writing and the art?
Well, for me, it's that's the stuff I'm always looking for as a writer and as a reader. It's it's more about the relationships between the characters, and so I'm always trying to find ways of making it more personal and grounded. And yeah, it's a very difficult part, and it takes a while to figure out sometimes. But at the end of the day, I always want to make sure it's about the characters and those relationships, and that means making it smaller. But then you do want to have those big explosions and big set pieces. I always think about theater, if you ever go see a play, and sometimes we'll go to see a play and I'll have this big gigantic set, and that's cool, but then the lights will go down and it's just the two actors for a moment and they're just acting their asses off, and sometimes that's the best part. That's the moment where you finally really get involved.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I went and saw Patrick Stewart. He did a Christmas Carol, but it was a one-man show, and so it's just him by himself playing every single part. on the stage. There was no set. It was just him, black stage, and he had props, and that was it. It was amazing, and when he was able to do that, like he, through acting, was able to fill in the rest. And so whenever I'm writing, I always think about that, where it's like, yes, you can have all these big things, but you have to have that, like that one character, that one person, that presence. And so with Dark Crisis, I really was like, no, I want to make this about the characters, and that means kind of bringing it down, making it more personal, while at the same time things are exploding all the time. And with Dark Crisis, the first 3 issues in particular are a lot more personal, and then it starts to build and get bigger. But then we bring it back to the small again.
Yeah. I'm glad you feel it this way, because it's what we are trying to do. So when you mentioned you're feeling it this way, it's like, okay.
We did it. Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, it feels super nice to us, because we're trying hard, because we don't want to do just like fireworks. It needs to be big, but it needs to be intense, emotional. You need to care for what's going on, and not just blast and punches everywhere.
I worked on metal and death metal, and like Scott Snyder is one of my best friends, and he would always talk about how death metal was a rock show. It was this gigantic concert, and I didn't want to just copy what he did. I didn't want to just do that all over again. I wanted to then bring us back down and do something a little more intimate and smaller. Because we just done that. We just did such a big, loud, concert, as Scott liked to call it, that I was like, yeah, well, now we got to do the intimate concert. We got to do the smaller one.
The best part of the script, the best part of what he's doing, I think, it's that he keeps this feeling even when we get massive on the further issues, when everything explodes. Anyway, you can feel this way. Not just when we're smaller at the beginning, it increases a lot, but always you feel the intimate, the feelings, the emotions there. So I think that's the best part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to ask about the Great Darkness, where it's this kind of entity. I didn't know how to gender it when I was like, it's, I guess, but that
even then,
that has this really long history, kind of dating back, to Alan Moore, and then kind of lays fallow for a while, where we don't really get it in any significant capacity for really decades. Can you speak a bit to the choice to really bring the Great Darkness back and make it such a key player in the DC universe again?
Well, early on, I remember I was sitting on the couch and I was just thinking about the event and the stuff that I wanted to do with the event, and we knew that we were gonna. Part was like there was this idea of like comics have to be dark, and so I started playing with those ideas, and I was like, oh, I could use the Great Darkness, and I love that story, and I knew a lot of people who had touched on it, like Grant had touched on it, but like James had touched on it a bit, and Just League Dark, and we touched on it a little bit with metal stuff because of Barbatos. Like we kind of danced around it a little bit, and I was like, well, what else is there at this point? Like in terms of these big villains, it's like this is, and even then. The Great Darkness isn't a villain. It's not a villain. It's not. It's not even a presence.
It's like a concept.
And what it represents, and what it represents to me, and the kind of nihilistic thing that I kind of feel toward it, right? And just early on, just looking on something. I mean, Pariah plays a much bigger role and a bigger piece, and I think there's more to be revealed about the Great Darkness. As we announced this book today called The Deadly Green that Ron V and Alex and Dan are writing, and that's going to play around a lot with the Great Darkness pieces. But early on, I think it was just like we were having all these conversations about the book. We were trying to figure out what it was going to be about, and we knew that death metal. There was part of the ending was going to be that the time stuff would be restored. And when everyone was warned, there would be a cost, there would be a darkness. And I remember when we were talking about that, I'm like, well, if there's a cost in the darkness, that means the Great Darkness has to wake up. Like, it has to have triggered somehow.
Yeah.
And then you'll see there's all kinds of stuff throughout the book that will play back that idea of what's happening with the Great Darkness is happening. It might surprise you. Like, there's definitely a twist in there.
Cool. I think we're approaching towards the end. Might be one or two more questions left. So the first one is, like, this is a book that it's so much about legacy, like it's grappling with it, I think, in very interesting and real ways, but it also makes me wonder, in the kind of grand scheme of things, what do you want the legacy of something like Dark Crisis be? Like, what is your absolute ideal? Obviously, it's a thing you can't control, but like, you know.
You know, I just asked this. I did a podcast recently with Kieran Gillen, who was writing Judgment Day over at Marvel, and I asked him a question like that at the end. I asked him, I was like, "What do you want at the end? Like, you're 20 years later, and you look at this. What do you want?" And Kieran had an answer, and we went back and forth, and we were joking. You know, Chris, you're like, "Well, I want to survive it first. Like, that's that's it. You know." I think at the ending to have fun, you know, to enjoy our time with our collaborators. I think, you know, we can down holes of like, oh, I wanted to stand the test of time. We can go down all these things, but I think in the day, I just want the readers to enjoy it and have fun, you know. And the ending, when I was on Flash, I had something very specific to say about Barry. On Robin, I had something very specific to say about Damian. On Dark Crisis, I feel like I'm trying to say something about DC as a whole, and so I'm hoping that when I get to the ending, that people see the work we've done and they see that we were trying to say something about DC as a whole. And I think that's the thing that I would hope at the end, is that 20 years from now, if someone were to look back at Dark Crisis, they're like, oh, that was about this and it said this about the DCU, and it was a good thing. It's all good things about the DCU. So I'm hoping they look back and that's what they see.
To me, it will be like if in the future, 10, 15 years, some new reader to the comic books or some new reader to DC feels the need to read Dark Crisis to understand more DC. You know, if we make that this book stays as one of the books that has made the DC path. You know, like Infinite Crisis. When I just started reading DC, I was like, what do I need to read? Like I don't know how to say in English, milestones?
Milestones?
Yeah. To me, the best, like, okay, we made it, you know, will be if the new readers look for Dark Crisis to know what DC is about.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. I think just one thing, which is, this was something that kind of struck me at the panel, and it's really been, it's kind of, the phrase has been bouncing around my head since then. I have to actually pull up to happiness prisons was a phrase that you said. But I'm really interested in it because I think there's this notion, because something you guys have been talking about with Dark Crisis is that it is a book that is, it doesn't want to just be dark, but it also wants to show happiness and joy. And can you speak a bit to that? Because I think a lot of times in comics, we have this sense, and I think we are also coming kind of out of a period of things are dark. You know, you can't be a hero unless you're miserable.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it feels like Dark Crisis. It feels like Dark Crisis is speaking against that. So I kind of want to hear you guys on that.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, there's definitely a light in the dark, you know, and I think, but you can also twist those ideas, because like Pariah has a twisted version of it, and he talked about this in the first issue, where it's like at the beginning of the book, Pariah is like, you know, there was darkness after my parents, or I'm sorry, Nightwing at the beginning of the book is like, there was darkness when my parents died, and then with Bruce, we lit the candle, and taking that vow, like it gave light to his life, right? And then at the ending, Pariah is talking about how all of these major things, all of these heroes, all these good things in the DCU all came out of the dark, right? So it's like, yes, you know, we have Batman because his parents died, we have Superman because Krypton was destroyed, we have Flash because of his mother dying, you know, even Hal, like his father died, right? Like there's all of these things that came out of darkness, but he's twisting that idea. He's gonna say like, even the birth of the multiverse started because it was the darkness, and then the darkness screamed in pain, and then we had the multiverse, right? Like, and I wanted to twist those ideas of it, but I don't believe the DCU should be dark or has to be dark to exist, you know, and so I wanted to pose those ideas, and that's why we called it Dark Crisis, you know? As I made a joke in the panel, it's like we couldn't call it Happy Crisis. I'm telling you, if we called it Happy Crisis, I think everyone would be happy with it, but it wouldn't have sold. So, you know, I just wanted to play around with those ideas, yeah.
Also, happiness prison is the worst kind of prison because it's a one that you don't want to escape.
You wouldn't want to leave. Yeah.
So it's the best prison.
Yeah.
But he's using the Justice League to kind of feel those worlds and then what those worlds will become. And you know, so he's like, okay, if I make them happy, they will stay, and then I can use that, and then you'll see what happens with that because of it. But yeah, I mean, we wanted there to be happiness prisons. That was what I kind of went to everybody, and I was like, what would make them happy, you know? And everyone took it in different directions. Like that was actually one of the really fun parts of those one shots, was that like Tom King took it in one direction, you know, Dan Waters did a Martian Manhunter story, and he took it in a different direction. It's really cool. And T. Howard did a Wonder Woman story, and she went in a different direction. Like, yeah, it was just really cool to see what everyone kind of took that idea and ran with it. Like on the panel, I told Tom, don't make it sad. He still made it sad. Yeah.
can't make Tom King not make a thing sad, right? It's impossible.
I know.
Well, guys, I believe that's time. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. A pleasure.